Today, the feature question, the thing that we're going to be talking about right at the beginning, is something that I know is happening a lot because we're getting consultations. And that thing is study permit refusals. There's only so many spots. And I know the government doesn't announce that, but the reality is many people are getting their study permits refused for a wide variety of reasons. I'm not going to address all the reasons because if it happened to you, you know what they are, at least what has been listed on your refusal letter. But what I want to talk about today is what you do after you get this refusal letter. Well, what do you do? I did a little search on the internet just to see what was out there, and oh my goodness, there is a ton of helpful advice out there from a lot of people recommending what you should do. Well, in the video today, I'm going to share with you what I think your approach should be as you're going through this process, trying to identify where do I go from here. All right, let's jump over here. And the first thing on the list is the question of GCMS notes. And in fact, this is the question that was asked when I was fielding questions for upcoming feature questions on our YouTube channel. So what I want to identify is in particular, and I'm just going to pull this up here, the specific question that was asked. And the question, which led to me being able to explain all this, was, do we need to wait for GCMS notes for a rejected application in order to set a consultation? My GCMS notes are delayed. All right, so basically what we're getting at here is the simple fact that when you are getting those refusals, you are not getting the entire story. It's with the advanced analytics and the artificial intelligence and all of the batching and the way that they process applications in large volumes, it results in refusals coming. And we have heard rumors that as high as 25% of refusals can be wrong in law. In other words, they relied upon a ground that doesn't even exist for your situation. So the very first thing you need to do is look and see, okay, what they're saying here, is there some element of reasonableness to this? Does it make sense that this refusal occurred and, based on my facts? If it says, well, my application is being refused because of family ties in Canada and I have no family ties, then that's going to be an issue, right? That's something for sure where you know right off the bat it's not correct. So do you request the GCMS notes? Because at times officers will have additional information in there that is not on your actual letter. And if that's the case, then yes, you need to get them, but you have a problem. And the problem is pretty simple. It can take right now up to 90 days or more to actually get those notes back. And when you get a refusal based on the other options that are available, which I will explain in just a little bit, you may not have enough time to actually get those GCMS notes back before you decide to proceed forward. Why? Well, there's a whole host of reasons. If it's a study permit refusal, you're going to miss your admissions date. Maybe you're pushing up against timelines that you just can't move for a variety of reasons, both personal or with the institution that you want to study at. So requesting the GCMS notes, there's never any harm in doing it, but relying on them and waiting on them to come back before you take your next step, before you make your next decision, well, don't wait for them. It's as simple as that. So should you request the GCMS notes, there's no harm in doing it. Go ahead and make the request, but do you wait before you take the next step? No. If it comes back quick, great. If it comes back before you've taken this next step, and what is the next step? It's reconsideration. What is reconsideration? Well, if you go to I'm going to flip back here to our website. I want to point out a fantastic article right here that Cedric wrote in June that is on judicial reviews and in particular requests for reconsideration. So if you want specific details on how to go about this, the strategy, what you include in that reconsideration request, Cedric drafted a step-by-step guide to prepare your own reconsideration request. Okay, so I just wanted to bring that up, but this is the next stage. So reconsiderations are basically when you go back, and it's usually through a web form, you will submit a request just like that, but it's not just please reconsider it. Like you need to very, very carefully justify how the officer made a mistake in how they assessed your application, and not, oh, I forgot this document, it got refused. Well, can you please reconsider it? I'm sorry, I forgot the document. No, ain't gonna fly. So when you're applying for reconsideration, you need to identify what was wrong in the way the officer made the decision on your study permit. So that's one method, obviously applying for reconsideration. One of the challenges with reconsideration is, just like GCMS notes, you can't wait on getting a decision on your reconsideration request before you take another step. And I'm going to jump ahead and I'll just show you 4, which is applying for judicial review. But we're not quite there yet because you have another choice to make. If, and we do this a lot for our clients, and you can easily slide over to our firm, there's a link in the description below to book a consult, but you need to assess and really see, oh, did I do something wrong? Was that refusal justified in law? Was there reasonable grounds, for that officer on a balance of probabilities to believe, or to make the decision, I should say, that they did? Did it make sense? Was there grounds to make the decision that they made? And so that's what we do within our firm. We help clients to assess. We go through your application in detail, and then after that, we make the determination. What do? Do we request GCMS notes? Yes, in almost every situation we do. 2, do we apply for reconsideration, or do we decide to file a judicial review application? Now, when it comes to judicial reviews, there are timelines, and this is the issue. If you submit a reconsideration request, you guys, you will be very, very surprised to hear that the response to that reconsideration request is all over the map. So there are times where you're going to get that decision super fast. And in fact, I had an express entry application refused a few years back. I submitted a reconsideration request and said, hey, look, you guys have got issues here. You should not have refused this. I don't think it was reasonable. And I'm going to have to judicially review this if you persist in confirming that this is a refusal that you're not willing to overturn. Well, in a week and a half, we got the passport request back, and literally the client was landed through the e-COPR process. I would say probably within 2 weeks of filing the reconsideration request. Flash forward to today, I had another express entry application that was rejected, and they alleged misrepresentation by my client. That one I had taken over from an immigration consultant who had sadly passed away. The client had reached out to me to see if I would take over it. Well, there was a ton of problems with the application, leaving that aside. But ultimately, they alleged that the client had misrepresented when the consultant had filed the application. And obviously, a 5-year bar, I did not agree with that at all. I felt that the decision that they made was egregious and not based in law. So we filed a judicial review application. That judicial review application was eventually, it was consented to by Department of Justice lawyers and sent back for reconsideration. Well, at that time, then I should say at that time, that was like last year, almost 1 full year later, I get an email notification saying that the express entry application was being reopened. So you can see the variation in time in terms of how long it's actually going to take to get your reconsideration considered can be a massive amount of time. And when it comes to judicial review, you have a very, very short timeline in which to act on it. And I'm going to show you right here. I'm just going to slide right over to the Department of to the federal court website, and you'll see right here that if your decision right here, your application for leave and judicial review may be served on the other party and filed, okay, with the registry of the court within 15 days for a matter arising in Canada and 60 days for a matter arising outside Canada. So typically study permit applications would be, if you're outside of Canada, you're going to have 60 days to file that judicial review. But you have to be very, very cognizant of the fact that you're not going to wait for a decision on the reconsideration because you may lose time with your judicial review. Now, the last little thing that I want to address for you guys is that, and I'm going to pull off the judicial review, is that after going through things, maybe you've requested reconsideration, maybe even before, you need to make the decision as to whether or not, like I said, there were grounds for them to refuse. And if there were, then maybe your best option is simply to refile your application. And if you refile it, then you have an opportunity to address any of the concerns in the GCMS notes if you've gotten them back quickly, or after us. When I'm going through this process, you guys, I essentially put on my old immigration officer hat. I review everything in the application that the client would have submitted on their own, and the lawyers in my office do the same. And we then assess whether or not that refusal was correct. And I'll be honest, in many circumstances, you guys, that decision was actually correct and justifiable. It was a reasonable decision. Why? Because maybe you didn't include all of the information that you should have included. Maybe there were documents that were that you'd included that actually worked against you. So you thought they were helpful, but really they just confirmed with an officer that no, you didn't have temporary intent. Maybe you didn't provide a sufficient ties, and all of those grounds for refusal. I'm not going to talk about those. This is more about what to do after. But often we'll do that assessment and we will realize very quickly that the application itself was just, it was a poor application. So at that stage, then we don't waste time with reconsideration. We don't waste time with judicial reviews, filing leave applications. Instead, we focus on revising, updating, correcting the problems, and strengthening the new application. So sometimes that's it. So ultimately, guys, that's kind of the approach that I take. And when I'm looking at the options that are available, people will often ask, okay, that's great, Marco. What should be our next step? Well, it's pretty simple. I recommend that you slide over to our office if you do have a refusal, and click on the link to book a consult and join us. Let us help you. Ultimately, it's hard for me to say what any person should do in the context of a live stream just like this or a recording. But the most important thing for you to realize is that when you are in this situation, you have to act quickly. You can't wait. You can't delay. You need to take action. And a consultation is a great place to start because we can go through things, give you a little bit of direction, and let you know whether or not we think you should just reapply, or whether you should proceed forward with reconsideration, and even, if necessary, if you have no other options, filing a leave application for judicial review. So that's kind of where we're at today, guys. And I hope that was helpful. But yeah, if your study permit is refused, which we get a lot of these consults, hopefully this information will at least give you a little bit of direction. Remember the blog post, and if you Google search what to do if your visa application is rejected, you'll probably get one of the old podcasts that I did. I remember a few years back, I had Richard Curlin join me, and we addressed a lot of these different things within that podcast as well. And we've done it a number of times after that. So that's on the Canadian Immigration Podcast. All right. Well, hopefully that was helpful.